Now let us come to this entropy factor. In fact, this is a very big point, entropy. See, there is one more characteristic of a spontaneous reaction, that when a spontaneous reaction happens, the entropy increases. Is it not? For spontaneous processes, we tell the entropy of the system increases. So your delta S is positive. Most of the cases, the three index for a spontaneous reactions in terms of enthalpy, entropy, and Gibbs energy are this. What are those? Delta H negative, delta S positive, delta G negative. That means enthalpy decreases, free energy decreases, whereas entropy increases. Fine, this is the point. Now, if entropy increases, in a very simple sense, how to understand that? The disorderness within the system should increase. Fine. So now let us consider a cell as our system. Okay, so keep that question in mind. How we are using these thermodynamic parameters to define life. Keep those questions in mind. So when we start observing a cell as our system, and a cell basically from a biochemical point of view is a giant laboratory, right? I shouldn't say giant laboratory, is a very complex laboratory which conducts numerous chemical reactions within it, a cell. Is it not? I'm suppose that you have some basic idea about metabolism, right? Maybe you have started studying that in your other subjects. Metabolism. Example, how glucose is photosynthesis. What is photosynthesis? Set of chemical reactions. What is glucose glycolysis? Set of chemical reactions. Krebs cycle, again a set of chemical reactions. Or protein synthesis, a set of transcription, translation, replication of the DNA. All these processes are what? They are a sequence of chemical reactions happening within a cell. Is it not? Of course, that the process is not single step, rather it is a multi-step sequential chemical reactions. Fine. And these are all spontaneous reactions. At least let us consider now, as of now, they are spontaneous, because we'll later see how they are made spontaneous. Later we will see how they are made spontaneous. As of now, let us consider these are all spontaneous reactions. So when there are numerous chemical reactions going on inside a cell every second, okay. So what should happen to the entropy of the system? The entropy of the system uh, should to a very high levels. The entropy of the system should increase to very high levels. So essentially, what should that mean? Essentially, it should mean that the cell is becoming disordered every second. From its birth to death, let us consider, it should go on becoming disordered. And at one point of time, when this disorderness increases, crosses the threshold, the cell should burst, basically. Is it not? If the disorderness increases inside, you cannot hold molecules together. You cannot have DNA stacked. You can't have DNA into a double-stranded helix if the disorderness is too much. You cannot have proteins folded in their conformation. Disorderness is too much. So what should happen? Because of this increase in disorderness. Why the increase in disorderness? Because the cell is conducting lot of chemical reactions which are spontaneous. So the cell should burst. Essentially, if I have to put it in a very simple term, the cell should burst, or the cell should lose its molecular integrity. The cell should lose its assembly nature, but that's not happening. A cell is living life. For example, animals, including humans, can live up to 100 years. And there are plant species, particularly some trees, which are living on Earth since almost 1500 years. There are such trees on Earth which are about thousands of years old. That means the cells, at least some of the cells in those trees are living for thousands of years. So how is this happening? So But now let us come back to the living and dead dog analogy, which we took in our previous class. If you look at the chemical composition of a living dog and a just dead dog, they are analog. They are almost identical. But why is this dead and why is this living? Here is the point. Now I'm going to give you the definition of thermodynamic. So any living cell does two things. One is, of course, it does a lot of chemical reactions spontaneous. Second is it resists the change in entropy. Okay, it's a very important point. A living cell, a living beings oppose the change in entropy, so they do not become disordered as long as they live. This is the basic difference between a living and non-living thing. If you burn, for example, if you conduct some chemical reactions, essentially non-living, take some example, you put water to sulfuric acid. So what happens? It is a very spontaneous process, dissolution of sulfuric acid in water. Heat is liberated, therefore the entropy of the system increases. But cells do not allow the entropy increase, their entropy increase. Because of this ability of the cells to stop the change in entropy, they are having this identity. They are living as cells. If not, if they had not possessed this ability, they would have become a lot of disordered and started to cease to exist, stop to exist. So now, if we have to make this definition, if possible, what is life? If I say, oh, okay, let me not ask this question, what is life? What are living beings? If I ask, so if I ask this question, what are living beings? So from thermodynamics point of view, if I have to make a definition, what do I give? I will just tell that living beings are those entities which resist the change in entropy. This doesn't happen everywhere in the universe. A spontaneous process doesn't resist the change in entropy. It simply increases the entropy. So even your second law of thermodynamics tells, maybe second or third law tells that the entropy of the universe is ever increasing. Is it not? But within a cell doesn't happen. So now we have a different angle of looking into life. Is it not? What is this angle? Now we will look into living beings or cells as systems which resist the change in entropy. Okay, so now a living cell and dead cell, this is all the difference here. A dead cell will not resist the change in entropy. It is simply open to all the forces of nature to be acted upon it. And what is the direction of the universe? Increase in entropy. So a dead dog immediately, although its chemical composition is same, the molecules inside are same, it has, because of death, lost the ability to resist the change in entropy. So what happens? Slowly it gets decayed. It cannot do the processes which are required to maintain life. So maybe in a matter of weeks, the dog is no more. Even the body of the dog is no more. It is simply left decomposed. Of course, I'm taking an extreme example. If the body is just left to decompose, so there are no molecules of the dog even, right? They are all spread into the soil. They are all spread into the air. They are maybe spread into the water. There's no dog. So this is what the life is. They all resist the change in entropy. Now, okay, fine. There is one more question which I want to ask. Is this that what is you see this? You see this slide? If this is the cell, there are molecules inside disordered, but you see the molecules inside the cell which are ordered. assembled, order. Maybe this is a protein. So this is how a protein will be inside a living cell. This is how the protein will be inside a dead cell. The assembly of the protein is broken. The orderedness of the molecules are broken, and they are just simply left to random. Okay, fine. Anyways, so like I told you, the spontaneous reactions, the criteria is negative side. Delta G should be negative. And there are equations, thermodynamic equations, which can relate delta G to other cell reaction parameters. So what are the cell reaction, sorry, not cell, any chemical reaction parameters. So which are the parameters of a chemical reaction? First of all, what is the concentration of the reactants you are taking? Second of all, what is the temperature at which you are conducting? So these are the two important parameters of a chemical reaction, concentration and temperature. Same thing happens within a cell reaction also. If you, for example, conduct the oxidation of glucose outside a cell in a test tube, or you conduct, or a cell conducts oxidation of glucose inside it, at that temperature, delta G should be same for both the processes. But what happens? Delta G equation, this is the governing equation of delta G. You see this. What is this K? K equilibrium. This is expanded. So if A plus B is equal to C plus E is giving rise to C plus D, that is our chemical reactions. How is equilibrium constant defined? Concentrations of reactions divided by concentrations of product of concentration of reactants, sorry, products. Okay. Product of concentration of products divided by product of concentration of reactants. This is how an equilibrium constant is defined. Now you see delta G naught and delta G. These two are different terms, is it not? What is delta G naught? Delta G naught is standard free energy change, and the standard free energy change happens is the what is the definition? That's the free energy change when the conditions are set at standard values. Example: temperature is 25 degrees Celsius, concentration of the reactants is 1 molar, and pressure is 1 atmosphere. In such case, and of course, in such case, what is the value of delta G you get? That is what delta G naught is. Now, you know, all the chemical reactions we do are not done in standard conditions, are not done under standard condition. You don't do all reactions at 25 degrees Celsius, right? You do the reactions at different degrees Celsius, different temperatures. And you don't always need not start a reaction at 1 molar concentration. You can take any concentration of your choice. Now, therefore, delta G naught is of some limited utility to us. Actual delta G is this one, delta G. That is related to delta G naught by this equation. Delta G is equal to delta G naught plus RT ln. Same thing, of course. You can convert this ln into log 2.303 log. There are equations giving like that. Okay, fine. Now comes the problem. What's that problem? As you know this, delta G value is strongly dependent on temperature T. Is it not? Now, if I ask you this question, what is the temperature at around at which most of the time cellular reactions happen? The average temperature at which most life exists is around 15 to 30 degrees Celsius. This is not 300, okay? 15 to 30 degrees Celsius. So, and the concentrations very low, is it not? Rarely there is 1 molar concentration is too high for a reaction inside a cell, is it not? So things are happening in micromolar concentrations, and things are happening at reactions are happening at very moderate temperature, 15 to 30 degrees Celsius. So from our experience, we can say that in our laboratory, if we go, except for some inorganic reactions like ions reacting in solutions to form some products, organic reactions, none of the organic reactions, almost no organic reactions you can do at this temperature. Is it not? Even simplest of the organic reactions like nitration of benzene or nitration of producing dinitrous, Most of the times you cannot do at 15 to 30 degrees Celsius. They require heating. Or you look at even, for example, starch hydrolysis. Take starch and then try put water inside it. Keep it for as long as you want. You don't get starch digested into or starch broken down into sugars very easily, is it not? You may have to add a catalyst, or you may have to heat it, basically heat it. But the cells can't do this. They cannot increase their temperature. There's a limit at which they can increase the temperature. Maximum 30 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Celsius, maximum. So because of these limitations, what are the two limitations? First of all, temperature is very low to do the chemical reactions. Second of all, concentration is very low. So what happens? Your delta G, your reactions at that temperature, very low temperature, cannot be spontaneous. Cannot be spontaneous. So how the cells have overcome this problem of conducting temperatures at conducting reactions at moderate temperatures? How the cells have find a solutions for this? That is by the application of enzymes, first point. Fine. So none of the chemical reaction, biochemical reactions inside the cell, no single chemical reaction is there which is not catalyzed by an enzyme. Okay, please remember this. All chemical reactions inside a cell, so these biochemical reactions, these are all catalyzed by enzymes. So when I tell this, they are all catalyzed by enzymes. And okay, we'll not go into that aspect, how the enzymes can bring down the activation energies, all those things. But enzymes, so that's the point. But still, in spite of having enzymes which can do chemical reactions at very low temperature, fastly, okay, very rapidly and at low temperature, that's the specialty of enzymes. They can do reaction very fast at very low temperatures. Still, there are many chemical reactions which are non-spontaneous. Okay, at this point, let us look into two types of reactions. I hope from thermodynamics you have defined reactions, classified reactions as endothermic and exothermic, is it not? So what are those endothermic reactions? Those are the ones which require energy to be supplied or required heat to be supplied for happening. What are exothermic reactions? Those are the reactions which give out heat when they happen. So almost the same classification we take for biochemical reactions also. So now we are classifying biochemical reactions into endothermic and exothermic, but there's a problem. Let us not use this endothermic and exothermic word, because thermal means heat, thermos means heat, right? And we see that the cells do not take large quantities of it. The cells do not give out large quantities of it. Okay, so their temperature is almost fixed, very small range of temperature, maybe some 10 degrees Celsius in which they operate. So heat is not a major source of energy for cells. It is not at all a source of energy for cells, heat. For our general chemical reactions which we conduct in our lab, which is the source of energy? Heat. Is it not? If the reaction is not happening, you will take the test tube or you will take the conical flask, round bottom flask, and then hold it to the burner. So supply heat and the reaction goes on. But in cells, heat cannot be the source of energy. Therefore, instead of classifying into endothermic and exothermic, we have defined or we have classified the cellular reactions into endergonic and exergonic. So what do we mean by endergonic? Energy is required. Energy is input. Exergonic, energy is liberated. Fine. So like we have endothermal, exothermal in general chemical reactions, we also have endergonic and exergonic in biochemical reactions. What are the criteria for endothermic, exothermic? The same criteria for endergonic and exergonic also. Basically, endergonic are non-spontaneous, exergonic are spontaneous. So if endergonic are non-spontaneous, delta G should be more than 0. And exergonic or simply delta G sign is positive. That's it, more than 0. Exergonic is delta G is less than 0. Delta G sign is negative. Fine. So you take any chemical reaction. The first classification you can do simply is whether it's an exergonic reaction or an endergonic reaction. Okay, fine. So I hope that you are understanding this point, endergonic and exergonic reactions. Now, let me ask you a question. Okay. Okay, let me ask you a question. What is that question? This is the question. A cell, or for example, we require energy, right? So why do we require energy? If I have to simply put, or why do we eat food? This is a high school question here. Why do we eat food? The immediate ready answer is to get energy. Why do we require energy? Anyone can answer this question? Why do we require energy?
To perform works.
Very good. Yeah, to perform works. Fine. What are those works? What are the kinds of works we perform? Broadly, how do we classify performing these works? What are the different types of works here? Muscular work, moving our muscles, the muscular work, mechanical work, muscular one, doesn't it require energy?
Requires energy.
Yes. So most of the times, the work we think of, imagine, is only physical work. Is it not? Not just you, even me. If I tell that a person is working, what am I looking at and telling he is working and he is not working? What is the feature I look at? Is it not physical work? Is it not physical work? For example, if a person is sleeping, do you call that a person is working?
No, sir.
No, definitely not. Yeah. And if a person is simply sitting and watching a TV, idly sitting doing nothing, still we don't call a person is working. Somehow, if the person is moving around, doing something, we call he is working a bit. But now that is okay, physical work. This is what energy is required, physical work. But physical work is only only one type of works of 100 different type of works a cell does. Okay, fine. In fact, if we can if we have to define the work itself now, that's the problem. What is work if you have to define? It cannot be only physical work. For example, now let us consider a person is in deep sleep. Is he not consuming energy? Is he not using the energy stock in his body? Hello? Person is in
Is
deep,
using, sir.
is using, but is he doing any physical work? No. So what is that work then? He is using work, he is using energy to do a lot of cellular processes inside the body. Is it not? Okay, example, isn't the heart beating even if a person is sleeping? Isn't the heart beating?
Yes,
Sir.
Yes.
yes, sir.
Yeah, very good. Isn't the brain working?
It's working.
Yes, sir.
Working. Okay. Unless we are in classes and in examination halls, every time the brain works, except in those cases. Anyways, now at least when heart beating, you can tell it is working because there is some action, physical action, compression, expansion, compression, expansion. When I tell the brain is working, how do you tell brain is working here? There is no physical action. Is the brain doing some movements? Hello? Hello?
No, sir, but it controls all the functions.
That's what is that control? I mean, uh, so that is not visible basically, that work, is it not?
Yes, sir.
It is not
Sir, in
visible
terms of signals,
in terms of, hello?
signals that it sends to
Good, good, yeah.
receptors and
Oh, okay. So now what we are essentially doing now, we are trying to expand the definition of work. So work is not just physical now. Work is mostly cellular and molecular level. Okay, let us think like that. Work is now, for our discussion, is cellular and molecular level. Now, why do I tell this? So, can you give one type of process in a cell, any process in a cell, which requires energy? Don't just give physical work examples, some other process which requires energy input. Any one process. Oh.
for glycolysis ATPs are required.
Okay, glycolysis ATPs are required. Okay, you are going to very extreme examples. Have you heard of this passive transport and active transport?
Yes, sir.
So what are these active transports and passive transports?
The
Passive
movement of molecules against
Yes, very good.
potential
Yeah,
gradient.
passive is simply along the concentration gradient, through the concentration gradient, whereas active transport is against the concentration gradient. So, so cells absorb a lot of molecules into the cytoplasm through this active transport process. Is it not? They absorb a lot of molecules into cytoplasm through this active transport process. So that is requiring energy, but we can't see it. It is not physical energy. So, and then now the cells, example, synthesize a molecule, synthesizes proteins, synthesizes its own molecules, synthesize replication of DNA, transcriptions, translation. All these processes are energy consuming processes. Is it not? Protein synthesis is energy consuming. Please remember this. When every amino acid is linked through a peptide bond, that is due to an activated tRNA. So activated means what? Energy rich tRNA. Therefore, the work has to be defined in a new way now. So what is the definition of the work we can give now? Work is much more than physical. Work is more of molecular level things happening. Therefore, if I have to define work in terms of this molecular level, let me give this definition for you. So work from cellular molecular level point of view is simply for one who is teaching biochemistry like me, is simply, I will look at like this, is simply the ability of the cell work. Okay, work. Now I'm giving you different definition. Yeah, it is not general definition. What you are, work is something muscular, physical, all those things. Work is ability of the cell to conduct endergonic reactions. This is what the point is. Work means at the molecular level, can the cell conduct endergonic reactions? And what are these endergonic reactions? These are nothing but those reactions which require energy input.
Energy.
Now, why these endergonic reactions have to be conducted? For the living of the cell. Because all reactions a cell conducts is not exergonic. There are numerous reactions which the cell has to conduct for its survival, which are endergonic reactions. How these endergonic reactions are conducted? By the input of energy. Okay, at this point I will just leave you. Next class we will understand how the endergonic reactions are conducted. Fine. So now I told you, right, thermodynamics point of view, how the life is defined. Every time we understand new thing, I will define life in that new light. So now if I have to define life, a living cell, I will simply tell this. If a cell is if the cell has the ability to conduct endergonic reactions, it is still living. If the cell has lost its ability to conduct the endergonic reactions, it is dead. As simple as this. So all living beings now, for us, all living beings, we are all the ones given with the ability to conduct endergonic reactions at very minimum, at very moderate, simple, low temperatures. Okay, so this is what basically the cells are. Fine. So let me stop here and